Guitar legend Eddie Van Halen died of cancer today. Few could match his speed or his influence to an entire generation of guitarists.
New details have surfaced about Eddie Van Halen's final days, and they are more devastating than anyone expected. His death in 2020 shocked the world, but the events behind the scenes painted a far more troubled picture. Tension inside the family, urgent medical decisions, and a rapid decline no one saw coming. This update reveals the part of Eddie's story that stayed behind closed doors until now. The public myth and the hidden struggles. The moment the world learned that Eddie Van Halen was no more, felt like a punch straight to the heart. He wasn't just some rock legend. He was the guy who changed the way the electric guitar sounded, broke all the rules, and built something new and refreshing in its place. His son, Wolfgang, shared the heartbreaking news on social media on the 6th of October, 2020. His touching post helped many fans come to terms with the news. The public knew Eddie had been fighting cancer since the year 2000, and how hard that battle was, and how devastating it was when this one serious illness had finally taken him. For more than 20 years, that illness was the main story about his health. But the life of a rock legend is rarely that simple. There's usually more beneath the surface. In the weeks that followed, some conversations started to come up. Not from family or old bandmates, but from an official, detailed report. While it didn't change what happened, it revealed a hidden part of his struggle. It turned out that Eddie wasn't just battling one illness, he was fighting 3 others at the same time. His passing wasn't a slow decline from a single disease, but a sudden collapse caused by a chain reaction of serious health problems. This new information, which only came to light recently when the official reports were released, completely changed how we saw his final days. The story of Eddie Van Halen's fight changed from one of perseverance against cancer to a tragic account of a body overwhelmed by multiple conditions at once. So, what exactly did the document reveal that completely rewrote the story of his painful battle? The fact that he was battling serious health conditions while smiling and trying to make music is truly amazing. Looking back at his photos and public moments, what we thought was just cancer fatigue was really the exhaustion of a man fighting 4 battles at once. With the full story now known, every moment from his final year carries even more weight and emotion. The last images the public has of Eddie Van Halen are a mixture of vulnerability and hope. For a while, he became the subject of rumors and paparazzi flashes, seen only when he had to leave his private home for specialized treatment. Fans, always searching for any sign of their hero, were shown conflicting and unclear images that made it difficult to gauge the true extent of his illness. One of the most widely circulated photos was taken at a Tool concert in October 2019. Eddie, with short hair and a casual t-shirt, was attending the show with his son Wolfgang. In a now famous moment, a fan, completely oblivious to the man holding the phone, asked Eddie Van Halen to take a picture of him with the stage in the background. Many fans initially didn't recognize him because he didn't look like the long-haired, leather-clad rock star of the 80s. Another photo, taken around the same time at a luxury car dealership, showed him posing politely with a receptionist. These images were conflicting for fans for several reasons. His physical appearance had changed significantly due to age, lifestyle, and cancer treatments, which likely included steroids causing noticeable puffiness or bloating, contrasting sharply with his overall weight loss. Fans struggled to match this new, fragile image with the hero they had always pictured. Even as rumors about cancer spread, these photos didn't convince everyone that he was seriously ill. Since the full extent of his condition wasn't known to the public, people were left guessing and interpreting his health in different ways. We saw a man battling lung cancer, but we didn't see how bad things really were beneath the surface. We didn't see the underlying battle with myelodysplastic syndrome, a bone marrow disorder that was slowly compromising his blood's ability to renew itself. The fatigue and altered appearance were simply interpreted as simple exhaustion, not realizing his body was struggling to produce healthy blood cells, an even more serious sign of overall health decline. But while his fans were busy trying to figure it out, Eddie had been fighting for years, a battle of setbacks, specialized treatments, and a lot of endurance that ultimately led to a system collapse. Eddie Van Halen kept his privacy not just to stay out of the spotlight, but to be able to focus and fight against this ongoing battle that lasted over 20 years. The walls had to stay soundproof, because what was really going on was a cycle of hope, painful treatments and setbacks that would have been too much for a public life to handle. Eddie's long medical fight first became public in the year 2000 with a diagnosis of tongue cancer. This required surgery, which removed a significant portion of his tongue, leaving him permanently altered. He often blamed his cancer on the habit of holding a metal guitar pick in his mouth, an explanation that seemed both quirky and a bit too simple, overlooking the biological factors involved. He went into remission, but that first battle was only the beginning of his body's struggle. Years later, the illness returned, this time aggressively as stage 4 lung cancer. This was the beginning of a series of secretive and urgent treatments. Eddie frequently flew to specialized clinics in Germany for experimental radiation therapies and targeted substance regimens. These trips were exhausting, often done with only his wife, Janie, or his brother, Alex, all aware of the severity of the situation. Keeping things private was essential. Every time he seemed to get better, it felt like it wouldn't last, and every time he showed up in public, it could be the last time. Only a few people knew the full story: the specialized doctors, a small group of nurses, and his closest family, and they stayed completely loyal. They saw the same pattern over and over. A short period of stability followed by a setback. Hope crushed by new problems. This wasn't a straightforward illness. It was a constant battle with many ups and downs. He was simultaneously battling the primary cancer, the side effects of decades of hard living, and now the treatments themselves. The secrecy, though necessary, ended up hiding the medical truth. People only knew he was suffering from lung cancer, the main battle. But later records showed how the treatments and his fragile condition led to 3 more deadly problems: pneumonia, myelodysplastic syndrome, and a devastating stroke. The man was battling a fire raging in his lungs, only for 3 more to flare up in his blood, brain, and airways. The full scale of the damage stayed hidden until the medical system required a detailed report. The emotional toll on Eddie's family was constantly overwhelming, so they kept their private life close and proceeded to shield Eddie from any extra pressure and distractions. His wife Janie, his ex-wife Valerie Bertinelli, his brother Alex, and especially his son Wolfgang, stood close together, fiercely protective. Their mission was clear: to safeguard Eddie's peace, his dignity, and above all, his hope. This called for careful handling with the outside world. Valerie and Janie, showing great respect and dedication, put aside their past differences to stand together, focusing solely on making sure Eddie was comfortable and well cared for. Wolfgang, already a musician himself, took on the role of his father's tireless protector, filtering phone calls, coordinating hospital visits, and shielding Eddie from the endless stream of online rumors. Alex, who had stood by his brother through every high and low, was there to show his support, carrying the weight of their shared past and unspoken fears. They had created a fortress, but it was filled with emotional tension. Every small victory, a good scan result, a hearty appetite, was celebrated, only to be quickly followed by the dread of a new symptom. This back and forth between hope and fear was non-stop. There was also a struggle about how much to reveal to the fans. Eddie often insisted on being positive and wanting to project strength, while his family saw the brutal reality of the stage 4 lung cancer and the constant medical complications he was enduring. They knew the truth was far worse than the public narrative of just cancer. They understood the complexities of myelodysplastic syndrome and the increasing risks of infection. They kept a tight lid on everything, knowing that if the full story of his decline got out, the media storm would break what little spirit he had left. The stroke, the bone marrow issues, and the severe pneumonia, they never let any of that slip into the public eye. But as Eddie's body started failing in too many ways at once, the shield they had built so carefully just couldn't hold anymore. No amount of love or protection could stop the truth from coming through. The painful details they'd worked so hard to keep hidden had to come out when the official time ran out, and the hospital records had to be made public. The rapid decline in his final weeks left too much medical proof behind to ever keep things truly private again. The catastrophic system failure. The last year of Eddie Van Halen's life wasn't a slow decline, but a rapid fall, especially in those final months. When the advanced treatments in Germany stopped working, the focus shifted completely to easing the severe pain and dealing with the frightening complications piling up from his stage 4 lung cancer. The final weeks were marked by emergencies and rushed, secret hospital transfers between home and care centers. It wasn't just the cancer raging, it was a total system breakdown. Doctors fought non-stop against infections and organ failures, signs that his body was collapsing on multiple fronts. The battle with pneumonia worsened as it quickly took hold of his already fragile lungs. This severe infection added an overwhelming burden on his weakened immune system, making recovery even more difficult. The diagnosis of myelodysplastic syndrome was an even bigger addition to Eddie's struggle. This severe bone marrow disorder meant his body was losing its ability to regenerate and heal. Staff correspondences revealed how increasingly difficult it became for doctors to keep his blood counts stable, highlighting just how fragile his condition had become. MDS was a cruel twist of fate, a condition that often shows up because of the very chemotherapy and radiation meant to save a life. In a cruel way, the treatment ended up bringing a third deadly threat into Eddie's body. These overlapping battles created constant tension. Every hospital update felt like coming to terms with a harsher reality. The family understood the end was near, but the number of medical crises they faced at once, the cancer, the infection, the failing blood production, still caught them off guard. Each day was a lonely fight against so many unending battles. This chaotic reality, the rapid onset of the stroke, the pneumonia, and the MDS, was taking shape just as his life was ending. The star who entered St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica for what his family hoped was a temporary measure was facing a medical reality that was too vast to overcome. The timeline was closing in, moving steadily toward the point when his body would no longer hold up under the combined pressures. A moment that would be clearly recorded in the final report. Eddie Van Halen's last 24 hours weren't a slow goodbye, but a sudden end to a rapid decline that started just 3 days before. He was admitted to St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California, where the atmosphere was heavy with sorrow and urgent medical care. The family was now facing a devastating update. The cancer, which had long been confined to the lungs and throat, had metastasized, spreading aggressively to his brain and other vital organs. While he had been battling cancer for 2 decades, this final phase, marked by widespread metastasis, had overwhelmed his system drastically in the final 3 days. Eddie's doctors and family watched helplessly as the catastrophic system failure reached its climax. His room became a sacred place, always filled with those closest to him: Wolfgang, his wife Janie, his brother Alex, and his ex-wife Valerie. Their conversations were gentle, often drifting to memories, music, and love, carefully avoiding the reality surrounding them. Instead of dramatic goodbyes, they shared soft reminders of a life full of love and meaning. The family stayed close, offering all their strength and sorrow to the man who was slowly slipping away. The medical tension was thick in the air. Doctors and nurses worked quietly but efficiently, focusing on easing his breathing and pain. Fully aware, they were now addressing the symptoms of a total system failure. As dawn broke on October 6, 2020, Eddie Van Halen drew his final breath. The cause of death was not the cancer everyone expected, but an unexpected cardiovascular event. The family stayed together, cherishing those last moments before the clinical records would reveal the details of the cerebrovascular accident that delivered the final blow. The real shock wasn't the cause of death itself, but the way his official certificate of death was made public in December 2020. The document confirmed the full extent of the family's painful journey. Once obtained and published by certain news outlets, it exposed the complete details of his decline, including the immediate cause: a cerebrovascular accident, stroke, that happened about 48 hours before he passed. The certificate was validated by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, and it provided a comprehensive clinical list of the underlying causes that led to the stroke and his death. This list included the advanced lung cancer, the month-long fight with pneumonia, an infection that inflames the air sacs in one or both lungs, causing cough, fever, and difficulty breathing, the 5-month diagnosis of myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS, which is a group of disorders where the bone marrow produces abnormal blood cells, leading to low blood counts and risk of developing leukemia. Squamous cell, which is a type of skin cancer that arises from squamous cells, which are flat cells found on the surface of the skin and some organs that can grow and spread if untreated. And atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm that can cause poor blood flow. The fact that the details surrounding Eddie's death are only coming to light now leave many questioning why the details were previously concealed. They had shared the essence of the struggle but kept the clinical facts to themselves. So, when the document was published, that became a source of outrage, the moment that truly shook things up. Wolfgang Van Halen immediately and publicly condemned the publication of the document, calling the tabloids scum and the act pathetic and heartless. He articulated the violation of privacy that the family felt, arguing that the attempt to sensationalize the painful details of what his father went through was unforgivable. This detail rewrites the emotional understanding of the aftermath. The emotional shock wasn't the truth itself, but the public display of a private, agonizing truth, forcing the family's pain into the light of the media. Eddie Van Halen's legacy and final reflection. The forced release of Eddie Van Halen's death certificate sparked a painful but necessary look back at his last 10 years. The document revealed a body battling not just cancer, but also a stroke, pneumonia, and a bone marrow disorder. Suddenly, historians and doctors weren't just seeing a rock star who died from one illness. They saw someone who had fought through an overlapping series of serious health challenges. This clear account changed how we understood his illness timeline. People had mostly thought lung cancer was the only cause, but the discovery of myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS, just 5 months before he died, meant that the very treatments meant to save him, years of chemotherapy and radiation, might have led to this blood disorder. It's a heartbreaking twist. The cure may have brought on a new, deadly illness. For his bandmates and industry friends, the document helped explain the exhaustion and withdrawal Eddie showed in his final year. His close friend and collaborator, Sammy Hagar, and others who had kept in touch, realized that the hopeful updates they'd been given were hiding the harsh reality of Eddie's severe physical decline. For the family, especially Wolfgang, the impact was doubled. The pain of having their privacy invaded, and the confirmation that his father's suffering was real and complicated, not just a simple illness. This record makes us see his legacy of endurance in a whole new light. Eddie wasn't just dealing with one challenge when we saw him smiling on stage or working on music. He was battling a storm of serious illnesses. The determination it took to stay calm and brave while his body fought so hard against failing blood and infected lungs is truly remarkable. That's the struggle only he knows and had to go through behind closed doors. We can see the medical facts, but we will never fully know how emotional his journey was. The fears he wrestled with, the hopes he held on to. Those are known only to him and those closest to him. It's a reminder that behind every public story, there's always much more to it than we may ever fully understand. We now see how much he must have struggled, but his legacy lives on through his son, Wolfgang. The weight of Eddie's medical struggle now hangs heavily over the vast collection of unreleased tracks and unfinished work he left behind in a vault in his 5150 studio. These recordings aren't just leftover studio sessions anymore. They are sonic documents that carry the weight of his battle, adding a whole new layer of meaning to every note. Wolfgang Van Halen, as his son and musical heir, quickly took on the responsibility of managing this vast collection. He wrestled with tough decisions about what should be shared with the world. While he has full control as the sole beneficiary, he's been open about his hesitation, saying it feels unfair to assume anything should be released without his father being there. This is not simple creative control. It is the emotional struggle of a son trying to protect his father's vision against the commercial pressure to release everything. Listening to any recording from Eddie's final days would give an insight into what mattered most to him and how he was feeling at that moment. Despite what he was going through, he still had a drive to create, using his guitar as an escape. His brother, Alex, helped look after and organize the music he left behind. In his last months, Eddie was going through his music carefully. He wasn't just putting things in order. It seemed like he wanted to make sure his son, Wolfgang, would get a meaningful collection of his songs. The music vault isn't just a bunch of guitar sounds. It's like a story of Eddie's feelings. Knowing about his health helps us understand the hard times behind each recording. That determined spirit caught on tape hints at the bigger impact he had, how those who worked with him really felt his exhaustion and stress, showing just how much he gave to the music world. When the clinical details of Eddie Van Halen's final battle were released without consent, it sent a new wave of shock through the rock community, one that went beyond just mourning his loss. Eddie revolutionized guitar playing and changed the way people play guitar by making the two-handed tapping technique popular and pushing the limits of rock guitar solos. His unique sound and custom instruments like the Frankenstrat inspired many musicians and was what made him become famous worldwide, bringing fresh energy to rock music. Early tributes celebrated his musical genius and influence, with legends like Gene Simmons calling him a guitar god and Nikki Sixx dubbing him the Mozart of rock guitar. But the private struggles that came to light painted a much darker picture, adding complexity to the story everyone thought they knew. The release of the death certificate revealed a clear difference between what people knew and what Eddie was actually going through. Musicians like Geezer Butler, who called him one of the nicest down-to-earth men I have ever met, learned that beneath that kindness, Eddie was fighting serious health battles. Stories from the road and studio took on a new perspective. Sammy Hagar said he had been trying to reconnect with Eddie for years and finally had a good phone call shortly before Eddie passed. He admitted, "I don't think anyone realized how sick he was," showing that even close friends didn't know the full extent of his illness. Sammy's statement points to the difference between the Eddie planning a tour in early 2020 and the Eddie that was dealing with several serious health issues at once. The medical details have also sparked debate about how to understand Eddie's final years. Some people think his long history of hard living caught up with him, while others focus on how he stayed creatively driven until the very end. These different views keep the conversation going and make us wonder, was his death the natural result of a complicated life, or just an unlucky outcome of serious health problems? What stands out most is the incredible strength it took to face so many serious illnesses at once. Now, our focus moves from the medical details to something much more personal. What were the last words he shared with those closest to him? In the emotional, tense setting of his hospital room, Eddie was simply seen as dad, brother, and husband. His family had worked hard to keep his privacy protected throughout. But in the end, it was the simple, personal moments that mattered most, beyond the medical details and paperwork. Over the course of his quick 3-day decline, those closest to him gathered around his bed at St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, offering support and comfort. His wife, Janie, his ex-wife, Valerie Bertinelli, his brother, Alex, and his son, Wolfgang, were all present. They had walked together through a challenging journey, facing cancer, myelodysplastic syndrome, acute pneumonia, and finally, the stroke. At this point, the medical terms no longer mattered. What remained was the strong and lasting connection they shared. Valerie Bertinelli later shared the intimate, heartbreaking details in her memoir titled Enough Already: Learning to Love the Way I Am Today, confirming the singular, simple message that defined those last moments. She revealed that, as Eddie's breathing became shallow and the monitors signaled the end, the only words spoken were affirmations of love. The final words Eddie said to Wolfgang and Valerie were, "I love you," and those were the last words they spoke back to him before he took his final breath. This heartfelt statement truly captures the essence of Eddie Van Halen's story. It shifts the focus away from the clinical facts and fame, highlighting instead the human side of his life. Despite all the challenges, conflicts, and health struggles, his final gesture was one of genuine love. The family's strong desire for privacy wasn't about hiding anything shameful. It was about safeguarding those precious moments. It's this connection, more than any famous guitar solo or medical record, that truly defines the legacy of Edward Lodewijk Van Halen. The initial shock gradually faded, but what followed was a slow time of reflection. The family, who had fought to protect Eddie's dignity and privacy until the very end, now had to come to terms with a painful reality. The death certificate was made public without their consent, exposing the severe medical details. Wolfgang's angry call-out of the media as scum wasn't about denying the truth, but about defending his father's memory from being cheapened by sensationalism. For them, the document wasn't a shock. It was the brutal confirmation of the decline they had seen up close. The detailed report finally showed the world just how fragile the legend really was. Eddie Van Halen was the man who could make a guitar sing with incredible power. Yet his own body was breaking down from several serious illnesses. This gave his withdrawal and exhaustion a new, heartbreaking meaning, turning judgment into respect for his strength. The guitar community fell into silence. His influence, which birthed entire genres and spawned millions of aspiring players who tried to unlock the mystery of the brown sound, now felt heavy with loss. Every electric guitar player, from garage band member to stadium headliner, paused to recognize that the innovator who broke the mold had finally been broken himself. Most importantly, his legacy is not just defined by the medical facts or the revolutionary genius of his guitar work. It is defined by the massive amount of love he showed his family, encapsulated in his final words, "I love you," and his commitment to paying it forward. Throughout his final decade, Eddie was a dedicated philanthropist, ensuring future generations got the chance he had. He once said, "Music kept me off the streets," and he acted on that belief by supporting music education for children in under-resourced communities. His primary charitable focus was the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, MHOF. He personally donated over 75 guitars from his personal collection in the year 2012, ensuring instruments reached schools that desperately needed them. The most notable act, however, was revealed after his passing. He left a 7-figure bequest to MHOF in his will, a transformative gift that ensured his passion would live on. His son, Wolfgang, immediately honored this by donating the proceeds from his tribute song, "Distance," to the same cause. This demonstrated a beautiful continuity of the legacy, emphasizing relationships and altruism over fame. The truth is that the man who redefined rock music was determined to make sure under-resourced kids had the instruments they needed. His final act was a vast donation to education. This generosity ensured that the spirit of rock and roll would continue to find new voices. The guitar god may have been mortal, but the music, the love, and the complex, beautiful story of his final days will live on. His life was an event. His death was sudden, and the full story still echoes, forcing us to ask, what hidden melodies lie still in the hands of the young artists he inspired, waiting to tell the story of the genius who entrusted them with his final gift? What song do you think best captures Eddie Van Halen's legacy? And how do you imagine the next generation of musicians will carry forward his spirit? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, click on the next video on your screen. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.